We now take you through this very, very important conversation. Now, the Nigeria's Governors Forum has shown its weight behind President Bola Tinubu's economic reform agenda, describing the measure as necessary steps towards stabilizing the economy and driving long-term growth. Chairman of the forum and Governor of Kwara State, Abdulrahman Abdulrazak, also called for a new national minimum wage of 100,000 naira, saying the proposal reflects current economic realities and raising living costs across the country. According to him, governors are working closely with the federal government and organized labor to reach a wage agreement that is fair to workers and sustainable for states. The forum position comes as discussions continue on inflation, workers' welfare, and policy aimed at easing economic pressure on Nigerians, with the minimum wage debate expected to remain a key focus in coming weeks. Joining us for this conversation is the Chief Executive Officer, CEO, Extium Consulting Limited, Adeyemi Ajayi. Good morning, sir. How are you doing? Good to have you on the show this morning.
Thank you.
I am very excited about this particular topic because oftentimes I have been speaking about the minimum wage, and we ask ourselves, even the 70,000 naira, how many Nigerians can truly live on that per month? Before you buy food, you buy light, you buy fuel, you buy diesel, before you know it's all gone. A lot of people are just working from hand to mouth. They pay salary, you pay your debts, and then you continue again. But now we're looking at 100,000 naira. It's a step in the right direction, although people will also say that is still a little bit too small for the realities of what we're facing now. But it's a step in the right direction. What's your take on this? Do you think that a lot of states will be able, to adopt this? Will it stand the test of time, or is something that we will start and along the line is going to be shaky? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Yeah.
This discussion has been going on, but I want to tell you for free that if even they increase the money to 100,000, it's just like a drop in the ocean, because a lot of things are happening now. See the price of fuel in the last 5-6 months. We've moved from 800, 900, we're on about 1,003, and some people will have to go to work. You have to pay extra to go to work. Now, check out what landlords are charging for rent now.
Yeah.
Where you pay rent of 500, they're collecting 2.5 million naira. Now, you can't blame this landlord. You can't blame the transporters, because they are also facing inflationary pressures. Now, your question of whether it's sustainable is what I'm afraid of. Even if you increase it to 100,000 naira, it's not sustainable. And I'll do a little calculation for you. Let's say a single person, not even a family person now. You eat 1,000 naira in the morning, which you know is not enough.
Yeah.
And you eat 1,000 naira at night, just 2 times a day. That's 60,000 naira gone from your 70,000, or let's say 100,000. Now you have 40,000 naira left. You're going to pay rent. You're going to transport yourself. And you remember that you're going to wear clothes. You're going to take some medication. So what are we really talking about?
Yeah.
So it's so worrying that, in 2023, when the first subsidy regime was actually, the curtain was drawn, on it, the governors, everyone was skeptical. They were scared, like what could happen. Maybe there could be protests and all of that. And now we now see governors who are happy that they are earning even more than 2 times of, so to speak, of the revenue allocation from the federal government. So we expected that they would have done more. So this is coming from the NGF, Nigeria's Governors Forum, when they met with the president and said that they would rather that the minimum would be 100,000. We know that labor at a point in time, NLC, and organized labor say they were calling for about 200,000 naira. That's at least is a starting point, which will not really work. Do you feel that yes, the federal government has done its own side of ensuring that they get more monies to the states, but the states have actually faltered in jacking up whatever they needed to do, to the subnationals, to their citizens in the subnational, so much so that they have not felt much of governance impact, on their lives.
Yeah, you see, we should ask ourselves, this increase in allocation from FAC, what are really the economic impact for these states? Some see it as free money. It shouldn't be. The state should be developed in such a way that life becomes easier for the workers. We can have initiatives like, with this money, there can be free healthcare for government workers in some of these states. There can be subsidized transport for some of these workers, using the CNG buses that are the initiatives of the government. So they can come up with things like that and say, okay, we're getting more money. You can have free transport to work, from any location within the state. if you want to go into agro production, the government can support you with zero interest. There should be developmental initiatives to ease the life of workers in these states. But I will tell you, they're not taking that direction. Now, coming to say that they want
I beg to differ a bit. Apologies, because we know that in Borno State, the government actually procured CNG buses, including even EV buses, helping them in transportation, even in Lagos State and some other state, even in Oyo State and some other state like that. And some of them are also bringing up different initiatives to reach the lives, of the people. But how far-reaching would you say that has been?
That's the question. And we should ask, what are the core impact, significant impact on this? And what are the adequacies of these things being provided for these workers? You just see that maybe it's a handful that are just enjoying this benefit. And if you see within the calculation I just made to you, if the NGF is coming up and saying that let's pay 100,000, something behind my mind is telling me that they could have paid more. They could have paid more. And I just tell you, I'm just talking about one person. Imagine husband, wife, and 4 children. How are they really going to, 5? How are they going to survive on 100,000 naira? So the question we should ask ourselves is, how did we get here? And how can we get out of here? Those 2 questions are very important.
And that's why we brought you.
Now, how we got here is a question of the reform. Now, I will say this, that the current government, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, I've looked at the initiatives and all that. They're far-reaching, they're long-term things. But again, what are the immediate, things to cushion the effect for people in Nigeria? See, I'll tell you this. If we increase the minimum wage to 1 million naira, come back 2 years, people will still complain. You know what? There is erosion by inflation. And it's just spiral. And before you know it, it will swallow the value and will come down to the same thing. So what do we think government should do? What government should do is to find means of reducing inflationary pressure, balancing trade and forex. We should also find a means where people can be more economically empowered in Nigeria. We have a lot of potentials in Nigeria. We have about 144 commodities in Nigeria that we can work on. And I tell you, it can generate over $1 trillion for Nigeria on an annual basis.
But you said something that has been on my mind ever since I saw this report. And I believe that it's not even about increasing it. It's about making sure that things are not as expensive as they used to be. When we talk about a bag of rice, when we talk about transportation, when we talk about rent, we are talking rent, we're talking in millions, 15 million, 20 million. In Lekki now, you cannot even see a house for the amount that you were calling, except you want to go to the bush. And now imagine that you're earning 100,000 naira and you're even supposed to stay in a house of about 5 million naira. So I believe that what you just said is something that we need to really hammer on, the fact that it has to be that we're reducing cost of living. Also, talking about the 100,000 naira, which we are saying is a step in the right direction, I want to ask you this very direct question, because I always speak for the youth. What amount do you think is fair enough for Nigerian youth? We've said something here very important. Nigerian youths are very smart. They're innovative. But most of them will tell you that, some of them do not even want to work again because they believe that there's no gain in working. I will just go and do, content creation. Not saying content creation is bad, but some of them don't want to get into the workforce. For you, what amount do you think is a great, benchmark? I know it's a very dicey question for the minimum wage for Nigerians.
For Nigerian youth?
Yes, for Nigerian youth.
See, in our own time, our own mouth is not as wide as we have now.
Yeah.
An average youth in Nigeria on a monthly basis will not need less than 250 to 300,000. That is just for them to live life averagely normal. Because if you look at feeding, you look at them trying to house themselves, gone are those times, early 2000s, that with a salary of 17, 20,000, I think I started with that. I mean, you can afford to rent a house. Yeah. You can afford to start a life. Now you find someone who has graduated, age 25, age 28, age 30, still living with their parents.
Yes.
Because they cannot afford to get a house. And some of them, they struggle to get a job. Yeah. Now, apart from struggling to get a job, what they get from the job cannot even sustain them to say, can I start a life? Can I even think of marriage? So to even think of their own survival, that 250 to 300 is survival pay for them. And I'll tell you that some drivers are even collecting that young. Now think of graduates. Imagine how life has been difficult for Nigerian youth. But the question is, we have a nation that has a dream, and that dream can spiral towards an average youth in Nigeria can latch on and be successful. We have younger Nigerians that are making it. And I believe if we put things right, Nigerian youths are very smart.
Yeah.
They can take economic advantage and turn things around. We just need someone to focus on economic value for the youth. Yeah. And I tell you, there are lots they can do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I understand the point you're making about the 100 million not even being enough, to ensure a decent living standard. Yes, we all know where we're coming from with the fact that there are economic shocks, arising from the policies taken by the government. For instance, the issue of removal of subsidies, leading to freeing up resources, for the public sector to invest in infrastructural development to drive growth within an economy. The issue of foreign exchange unification, to ensure that we can block the arbitrage, people not producing anything and making money just anyhow. You buy the dollar $4.50, then you go and sell it $7.50. Within an hour, you've made billions, and the government have done a lot in that aspect to free resources and ensure we are able to develop our country with our own resources. And we've seen the effect in terms of increased forest reserve, which is now about $50 billion. Investors' confidence have actually, gone up. We've also seen, that even the exchange rate is a bit stable now. But these have not translated into immediate, improvement in living standard and poverty. I submit and I agree to all that. But on the issue of minimum wage, even the 100 million naira being suggested by the governor, I think there are
100,000.
100,000 naira.
He's been saying that, I'm like, oh my God.
I think in millions. 100,000. We have to bear in mind that there are other actors in that sector. The private sector.
Yeah.
The public sector is only, the formal employment in the public sector is 30 million. And that represents only 15% of the total workforce in our country of about 90 million. You have the informal sector, which is about 77.1 or something million.
Right, yeah.
They are there. You are only talking about improving living standard for 30 million out of a population of 230 million with an active workforce of 84 million. Now, what happens to the rest? Because most people are not in that informal sector where they will get benefit from that 100,000. That is one. Even in that informal sector, you talk about the private sector. Have we had discussions with the private sector? Do we know whether they can afford to pay the 100,000? How many people in the private sector are paying the 70,000 minimum wage currently before we go down that route? Because when you talk about creating employment, it is not the government that will create the employment. It is the private sector that will create that employment. In addition to that, when you now take account of the fact that increased minimum wage may not necessarily lead to increased living standard, in the sense that, one, when you increase minimum wage, the landlord is going to increase rent. Transporters will increase their own cost. Logistics will go up. Cost of food will go up. Farmers and all others will want to have a share of that thing because they believe that money has been increased, forgetting the fact that it's only 15% of the workforce that will benefit from it. So at the end of the day, even the 77.1% of the workforce that will not benefit will end up, having to cough out more. And it promotes, lower living standards, promotes poverty rather than solving the problem. Because this issue of minimum wage is something which we all need to discuss and understand properly. Now, again, if we say we're increasing minimum wage, I'll give you a very good example. It gets to a point in time in UK when goods produced in Wales were more expensive due to the cost of salaries and all that, cost of production. And those factories ended up relocating to China, where it will be cheaper to produce. And at the end of the day, you only have the research and development in UK, whereas all the factories are relocated to China. And that's exactly what has happened to America following globalization. are we sure, have we really done our homework to ensure that we will not increase the cost of production to the point that even the companies, the investors in Nigeria will start relocating their factories, out of Nigeria, leading to an increased unemployment? I just want us to have a balanced argument. That's why I'm pushing the other.
I love that your perspective. You've broken so many things down. Your word has quite a lot of things. But I'll start with one that is very critical. Let's look at the stakeholders here. We have 4 different stakeholders. We have the federal government, we have the state government, we have the labor, and we have the organized private sector. Now, the 5th, which you mentioned, is the unorganized private sector, which form the bulk of the populace, in terms of workforce. Now, coming to the proposal from the federal government and the state government, now it's clear they are standing on the same side. Now, their negotiation and bargaining space is closed because they are aligning. Now, when it gets to organized private sector, now, the question like you raise is, can they afford it? Let's look at, how businesses are thriving in Nigeria now. Lots of businesses are struggling. From the beginning of this year, I know people that are considering shutting down, diversifying, looking for means of survival. And if this goes on, people will start losing their jobs. Now, the question is, should we increase pay or should we downsize and increase pay? That is the second option. And I bet you people would rather say, you know what, let's take this little that we have.
Don't downsize.
Don't downsize. That would be the obvious.
Or you call it right size in industrial relations partners.
Now, but the question again is, if these people are taking these little ones, in the case of not right sizing, would they be able to even live life that they want to live? Obviously, no. That is where you see things like corporate fraud likely happening. The cost of doing business, cost of operation is quite very high. And I tell you this, I look at the cost of energy, look at the cost of paying salary, now come and say, let's increase salary again. I bet you some people will sit back and say, oh, we're dead again. And you see from the last one, let's go back and do some research. You see some organizations were not able to sustain that increase in salary because they are not increasing revenue. So it will have effect, but what should we do? What should be the way forward? Let the government sit down. What are the sectors that we should focus on? We should be more productive as a nation. Let's focus on production. Nigeria has potential. Most times when I talk about this, I feel very emotional. When I look at what we have, I had a discussion at the point with Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. I saw the potential. 144 commodities. I worked with some people to develop national policy on 18 commodities, including oil palm. Oil palm alone can generate over 200 to 300,000 jobs in Southwest Nigeria. Southwest Nigeria. Not talk about cassava, not talk about ginger, kenaf, chili pepper, and we have those things there. Even livestock. So there are opportunities. Let us build an economy that is productive. Let these young people, as they are coming out of school, let them have entrepreneurial skills. Maybe that should form part of curriculum in our universities.
Totally
Most
agree.
people come out and they start looking for job. They're probably not going to be looking for job if within the curriculum they are being trained that this knowledge you have, this is how you can convert it to money. And I tell you, if you give Nigerian youth one, they will turn it to 10.
Absolutely. So, with all of these that you mentioned, and I know that that's one of the reasons why we have the Waste to Wealth, program initiative and all of that. But then, if you look at it, the national minimum wage will still definitely remain. That conversation will always have, and for the governors to be considering, for them to have made that, consideration, it means that they know that they can. But we know that some states are still even struggling to pay that 70,000 naira minimum wage. At the time it took off, some were still paying. They were not even paying the 30,000 naira that they moved on from. They were paying about 18 or thereabout. Should we look at the legal framework that the Constitution will say a state must definitely pay, and if they don't pay, that will happen? Or should we address it based on regional basis, where we say some states are more viable, let states decide how much we pay our workers, based on, our war chest?
Now that brings us to pay discrimination from what you're saying. 100,000 for somebody in Lagos may be very small compared to somebody from Ekiti, my state. If you give somebody 100,000 in Jos, he might survive. If you give somebody 100,000 in Ogun, or they may survive, but Lagos State, likely no. Now, if we come to that and say, let's, state decide. Remember, the word is minimum
wage,
meaning state can do.
They can't go
Yeah.
below
above
this.
that.
Yeah.
You can't go below this, where you can go above it. Now, it should be the state's prerogative to say we can do more based on what we have in terms of ability and affordability. States should be honest to do that. Now, coming to what you raised, like some people were not even able to pay that 70,000. From my own thinking, I don't think there's any state in Nigeria that shouldn't be able to pay that minimum wage. Remember, FAC allocation has increased, doubled.
Yeah.
In fact, more than doubled for some. They should be able to meet that. But more importantly, let state governors develop their state economically. There is no single state in Nigeria, I repeat, no single state in Nigeria that doesn't have potential to generate revenue. There is none. That they have that, they should focus on that. What areas can we generate money from? Don't let us only develop on FAC. What are other areas that we can generate money from? There are advanced technology in agriculture. We can go to value addition in agriculture. There are a lot of things we can do. Nigeria has banned the export of shea butter. Shea. What can we do with it?
What are we doing about it?
How can we build an industry?
If you ask me, these are very beautiful submissions, because I believe that no state should say that they don't have that amount of money. Because honestly speaking, some of the states are doing really well. Some of the governors are doing really well. We don't want to mention names of states that are doing well and states are not doing well. But the ones that are not doing well, at least take cue and see how others are doing it. And I also believe that in terms of this 100,000 naira, it shouldn't just be looked at the fact that if the state can pay, this state should pay it. So what about the other states? What about people that will feel cheated? But another thing I worry about now is, yes, they've come up with this very beautiful initiative, but can it stand the test of time? Because oftentimes we see initiatives like this, they go through 1 month, 2 months, they don't go through again, or sometimes they don't even go through at all. So what are we doing to even make sure that they say at least small is still something, at all is not bad. So what are we even doing to make sure that this 100,000 naira is even put into effect?
Yeah, I think it's always the question of the act. In July 2024, it was agreed that we have minimum wage, and inside the act, it was stated that this will happen every 3 years. One of the things that may come up is federal government or the stakeholders saying, hey, we have not reached that 3 years, so why are you asking for this minimum wage? But back to your question in terms of how should we make it happen? Let us come up with business case of how this is necessary at this point in time for Nigerians. You made a very important point about people in the private sector. And people that are even in the unorganized sector.
Informal sector.
If you go to these people doing POS, if you see somebody hire POS lady or a boy doing POS for him, they pay those people around 50,000, 60,000 naira, some 70,000.
Monthly or daily?
Monthly. Meaning those people also have it at the back of their mind that they should pay something reasonable to these, people working. But beyond that, what can we do to make that 100,000 valuable?
Exactly. True.
Has value? Because if we do not address that as a nation, this minimum wage song will come back again. If we are not careful, it will become part of national anthem.
Quickly, Mr. Shoni.
What can we do to make it more valuable, the minimum wage? Now, we have a situation where we are producing excess maize, excess cassava this year. The prices have dropped. There are so many farmers are thinking of not planting. Then it will impact on next year's cost.
Production.
What about looking at, I'm thinking aloud, looking at the system in Europe where what they call common agricultural policy, where we will guarantee a minimum that the price of an hectare or a load of cassava will not be less than this. Otherwise, government has to come in with subsidy. There's subsidy everywhere. We should not forget that. We know that the cost of importation of food has dropped, is now about $2.3 billion, and which is good for us. But if we are not careful, next year, we will need to import more simply because we cannot hold the farmers. In terms of reducing cost of living, that's where I'm going. I don't know what you think of it.
Very beautiful question, but he's going to answer you just after the show because our time will not permit us. So after, he's going to explain to us. Thank you so much, Mr. Ajayi. Very, very smart submissions. Thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning.